Ever feel like you're just going through the motions at work?
Mm,
Like you're on autopilot instead of cruising down the highway of success?
totally. You're definitely not alone.
And you know what? You've sent in a ton of articles on exactly this, taking charge of your professional growth. So that's our roadmap for today's deep dive.
And it's amazing, how these articles approach it from so many angles. Practical goal-setting tips, advice from people who've been there, done that. It's all here.
Okay, so let's say you're feeling that itch to shake things up career-wise. But, knowing where to even start can be half the battle.
Right. It's easy to get overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But we found that a bunch of these articles, like this one from Genjit, they really zero in on setting clear goals as that crucial first step.
absolutely. But, and this is important, it's not about just throwing out a vague, I want a promotion and hoping for the best. It's so true. There's got to be more to it.
One expert put it this way: imagine your dream job is like reaching a mountain peak. Instead of freaking out about that giant climb ahead, break it down into smaller base camps along the way.
Oh, I like that. Those milestones become way less intimidating than that huge, daunting goal.
Exactly. It turns that overwhelming climb into like a manageable hike with awesome views along the way.
Love that analogy. But even with a solid plan to actually reach those goals, we need, well, skills.
You're preaching to the choir.
Thankfully, a bunch of these articles dive into that too.
Yes. And they talk about both career growth and development. And honestly, understanding the difference between those two is huge.
Okay, so break that down for us.
Think of development as like stocking your toolkit, workshops, online courses, certificates. You're building up those skills. Gotcha. So that's development. But then growth.
Growth is when you use those skills on a project that wows your boss, maybe even lands a new client. You're proving what you can do.
Okay, that makes sense. So development is like practice, growth is game day.
Exactly. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets really interesting, even with all the skills, if you don't know about the opportunities.
Right. It's like having a killer secret recipe, but no one to share it with.
You nailed it. And that takes us to something that comes up constantly in these articles: networking.
Networking. I used to think that was just for salespeople, not for creative fields like mine.
I used to think so too, until I read these Career Village responses. One software engineer was telling his story how connecting with a former colleague on LinkedIn, just a quick message, led to his dream job. Who knew, right?
It's crazy how those little interactions can turn into something massive. And speaking of connections, one thing that pops up a lot is mentorship.
Yeah, and when it comes to navigating those tricky career decisions.
Which, let's face it, those come up all the time.
All the time. It's like you can't escape them.
It's like a choose-your-own-adventure novel, but for your career.
Exactly. And that's where a mentor can be so valuable. Someone who's, maybe a few chapters ahead in their own story.
Right. And the good news is, it doesn't have to be this big formal thing.
No, not at all.
Like several articles mentioned, it could be as simple as grabbing coffee with someone you admire.
Yeah, just pick their brain a little.
Exactly. Or even just shooting a quick message on LinkedIn asking for some advice.
And you know what I think is so cool about mentorship?
What's that?
It can go way beyond just like tactical career tips. A good mentor can really help you build confidence.
Oh, absolutely.
And they can even challenge you to see your career from a whole new perspective.
Okay, so we've got our goals. We're working on those skills. We're out there networking, finding mentors.
Check, check, check. Sounds like we've got it all figured out.
Right. But what about when things get tough?
Yeah, because it's not always smooth sailing, is it?
Not at all. No career journey is a straight line to the top.
Yeah.
There are going to be bumps along the way.
Exactly. And this is where those Career Village responses get really, really interesting, because these are real people talking about their experiences.
Real people, real struggles.
Right. And the coolest thing is, so many of them figured out how to reframe those setbacks. Instead of seeing them as failures,
Right.
they use them as fuel for growth.
I love that.
There was this one story, this graphic designer, she poured her heart and soul into this huge project.
Okay, I can already relate.
And then the client completely rejected it.
Oof, that's the worst.
The worst, right.
Yeah.
But she was devastated at first, but then she did something really smart.
Okay, what'd she do?
She reached out to a more experienced designer for feedback, just to kind of like debrief and understand what happened.
Oh, I love that she did that. So often we just want to bury those projects in the backyard and never think about them again.
I know, but she faced it head on. So brave.
So did this experienced designer totally rip the project apart?
No, actually, they helped her see it from the client's point of view. And that totally changed everything.
That's so important.
Isn't it? It's so easy to get stuck in our own heads, but getting that outside perspective can be huge.
Totally. Did it help her improve the design?
It did. And more importantly, it was this big learning experience for her.
See, that's what I'm talking about. It's so easy to get caught up in those feelings of rejection and miss the lesson.
Totally.
But okay, even when we know intellectually that setbacks are part of the process,
Yeah.
how do we actually deal with those moments? When we're feeling stuck, unmotivated.
When you hit that wall.
Exactly. Like, what do these experts have to say about that?
Mhm.
So we were talking about those moments when we hit a wall in our careers, feeling stuck, unmotivated, the whole 9 yards.
The worst, right?
The absolute worst.
Yeah.
Did our experts offer any words of wisdom for navigating those rough patches?
They did, actually. A couple of them really stressed the importance of having a good support system.
Oh, I can definitely see that. Like having your own personal cheer squad.
Exactly. Whether it's a close friend, a mentor, maybe even a career coach,
Someone who gets it.
someone who gets it. Just having that person to listen when you need to vent.
Or to give you that pep talk when you need it most.
Yes, someone to remind you of how awesome you are.
Because sometimes we all need that little reminder.
Totally. But, aside from the emotional support, one expert had a more practical suggestion.
I'm all ears. Hit me with it.
Keep a career journal.
A journal. Okay, color me intrigued. Tell me more about this career journal.
So it's not just about listing your achievements.
Oh, I'm sure that doesn't hurt.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Celebrate those wins. But it's more about taking a step back and reflecting on your experiences.
Okay.
Both the good and the, not so good.
So like a highlight reel, but with director's commentary?
Yes, exactly. Ask yourself, what challenges did I overcome this month? What did I learn from that project that totally flopped?
What surprised me?
Exactly. Because it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to actually acknowledge how far you've come.
Oh, 100%. We forget to celebrate those wins.
Yes. So then later, when you're in that rut feeling stuck, you can look back at those entries, remind yourself of how strong you are.
Oh, I love that. Proof that you've handled tough stuff before.
Exactly.
I'm adding start a career journal to my to-do list as we speak.
Honestly, I think it could be a game changer.
I'm ready for it. But, as we've been diving into all this advice, I think one thing's become crystal clear.
What's that?
There's no magic formula for career success.
No magic formula. I like that.
It's not one size fits all.
Everyone's journey is different.
It really is. What works for one person might be a total flop for another. It's about finding what works for you.
What works for you, for your goals, for your personality.
It's about you being in the driver's seat.
100%. And hey, that might mean taking some risks, trying something completely new.
Putting yourself out there.
Exactly. And maybe even stumbling a bit along the way. But that's how we learn and grow, right?
It's all part of the journey.
It really is. And at the end of the day, it's about defining success on your own terms.
So good. What does a fulfilling, meaningful career look like to you?
Exactly. That's the question we should all be asking ourselves.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's been fun.
Until next time.